Putting on my top hat, tying up my white tie, brushing up my tail.
Welcome to Hatcast,
the podcast about hats.
I'm Charles Berman.
And I'm Carl Bernhardson.
And we're here to talk about hats.
And what's today's hat, Charles?
Today's hat, which we're going to get to in a moment, is the fez.
Won't that be exciting?
I hope so.
But before we talk too much about that, what hat did you wear today?
Oh, well, I wore this one, which you can't see if you're listening, but Carl can see it.
I can.
This is, I would say it's brown, black, 2 shades of brown and black, checked, flat cap, the classic.
I am a big fan of the flat cap.
Most classics. Fine, it's 100% wool, made in China.
As it should be.
Lake of the Isles brand. I don't know that brand. This is a pretty worn-in, weathered flat cap of mine.
I've seen you wear this.
Has seen service.
Yes. Many, many, many occasions.
And I think it has worn with character. It looks like a well-worn, but well-loved and well-used flat cap and not like a shabby, broken down. I think it has worn its wear well.
No, I would agree.
What hat have you got today?
Well, I have what is known as a Stormy Cromer.
I don't know what that is.
It's a hat that was popularized by railroad engineers, although it's not the hat that you immediately think of, which is the sort of blue and white striped one.
Yeah.
But this was it's a wool hat. It has a circular crown. It looks very similar to a baseball cap.
Yes.
But it is not rounded at the top. It just has a circular flat.
Yes. And it looks sort of like, my first association is that this is sort of if you made Fidel Castro's hat out of fuzzy gray wool,
right,
this is what this would look like. And oh gosh, this is very nice. Where did you get this? It's new, I should tell people. It is new. It's got the tags on it.
I did wear it briefly, but it does have the tags still on
should
it.
I not reveal that?
Well, they know now.
Yeah.
It sort of breaks the illusion that I wore it around all
no,
day.
but it's all right. You did wear it today.
I did wear it today.
And it's being featured today. I was just saying that because I'm impressed.
It was a Christmas present from my mother.
Oh, well, that's a fantastic Christmas present.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I'm looking forward to wearing it some more. And it has actually a little... it comes with a little
booklet of information
about the history of the hat.
I wish every hat would do that.
It's pretty fantastic. It's also as all hats this time of year, it oftentimes comes with flaps. My particular model does not, but it traditionally does have ear flaps.
Oh, that's all right. I think today, now those of you listening I'm sure have some kind of weather, but it's unlikely to be exactly the same weather we have. Today was not so cold that you needed flaps.
No, flaps were not absolutely necessary. Actually, it was a very nice day. A lot of I saw even some of the ice melting a little bit. So
yeah, that's a fantastic hat. Which I think you could wear in almost any occasion.
Absolutely, maybe not with
not
a full
highly formal.
No, but even just normal going to work clothes.
Yes,
I work in an office setting where I don't have to wear a suit. I wear just a sweater and a dress shirt. And this goes just fine with that.
I imagine a sort of benignly eccentric older person who talks a lot wearing that hat.
Well, I'm on that road, aren't I?
You have to be prepared.
Start building the wardrobe early. Yeah, so those are the hats we're wearing today. So today we're talking about the fez.
The fez hat.
A hat I do not own.
Neither do I.
I
do know people who've owned fezzes.
You do? Okay. I've never seen one in the wild.
Really?
In the felt, as it were. I've seen them on TV and in movies.
I have as well.
But
I've seen 2 in the wild.
Really?
Yes.
Under what circumstances?
Well, one was worn by a guy I know who does Rocky Horror Picture Show reenacting.
Okay.
And he was wearing a fez that had a sort of a odd pattern on it. I forget what exactly it was, but it was part of his costume to wear eccentric things to Rocky Horror.
Okay.
And one is worn by a person I know who donated to something on... What's that thing where you donate online to things? Kickstarter.
Okay.
He donated to Kickstarter, and one of the prizes was a purple fez with a design related to whatever he was donating to. And I don't know what it was, but I have seen him wear this fez.
Okay.
And he's worn it sort of like one might wear a smoking cap.
Okay. Well, it's pretty similar to a smoking cap.
It is a little bit similar in form, and it's also from Turkey, like the smoking cap initially. So it's that's pretty appropriate. So the fez, I have seen it in the wild, but it's not very common to encounter in the wild.
It would get looks and some discussion.
Yeah. And I'm thinking of a third time, which we'll get to in a moment. The fez, well, let's describe it first of all. It's a red hat.
It is almost always red. It is a cylindrical hat, very slightly thicker at the base than at the top.
Yes.
It has no brim. That's probably one of its most defining features.
Yeah, that was what makes a fez. Because this fez worn by this person I know was a purple fez, but it was still a fez. It was just purple. Fezzes usually also have a black tassel on the top, sort of like you would see on another hat that we'll have to mention, the mortarboard.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a fun one. Oh, we'll have an episode on the mortarboard for sure.
Oh, yes. The history of Turkish hats is a little bit complicated.
How fun.
Yeah. Looking at Wikipedia here. And I'll explain what I had thought was generally the history of the fez, which was that, and this will expose my ignorance as not being a Turkish historian, but the story that goes around of the fez is that Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, father of all Turks, after the end of the Ottoman Empire, introduced the fez as a Turkish version, a distinctive national Turkish version of the top hat.
Okay.
So it's both Western and particularly Turkish. He removed the brim and made it red, and made the top hat Turkish.
Interesting. And this is false?
Apparently so, yes. This here says that in 1826, Sultan Mahmud II of the Ottoman Empire suppressed the Janissaries and began sweeping reforms of the military. His modernized military adopted Western-style uniforms as headdresses, the fez with a cloth wrapped around it. In 1829, the Sultan ordered his civil officials to wear the plain fez and also banned the wearing of turbans. The intention was to coerce the populace at large to update to the fez, and the plan was successful. This was a radically egalitarian measure which replaced the elaborate sumptuary laws that signaled rank, religion, and occupation, allowing prosperous non-Muslims to express their wealth in competitions with Muslims, foreshadowing the Tanzimat reforms. So this, according to this,
it was sort of a equalizing type of headgear.
Yes, and a modernizing, and it was done by Mahmud II in 1826.
So the 1820s and not the 1920s.
Much earlier than I had thought, which is interesting. And in order to illustrate this, there is a portrait of Mahmud II wearing a fez.
Right.
So I believe it.
There's
the
some
fez
proof
is
right
much
there.
earlier, yes. So, of course, the fez is largely and often associated. We're gonna get them to the course of the episode. I think there are three main cultural associations of the fez.
And what would those be?
Turkey,
Right.
fraternal organizations,
The Shriners.
and Doctor Who.
Right. That's the most recent one.
Yes. I think these are the contexts in which you will find fezzes associated with people. If you walk around down the street wearing a fez,
Right.
which you are free to do, I think people will think you are either Turkish, they will think you are going to a lodge meeting, or they will think you are dressing up as Doctor Who.
Okay.
Dressing up as a Doctor Who character, the Doctor. Now, I don't know, and I have the impression that fezzes are not that commonly worn in Turkey anymore.
No. In fact, I think that I had seen somewhere that they were briefly banned in Turkey.
They had been, it says, but I don't think they're a popular day-to-day street garb in Turkey these days.
Well, it'd be kind of like wearing a top hat, here.
yes,
You could do it.
You could do it, and you wouldn't be engaging in behavior which is unknown in society, but it would be rather out of place. You just don't see people usually doing it. Not that I haven't seen people doing it, because I keep my eye out for unusual hat behavior.
It goes with the job.
Yeah. Wikipedia tells us that there are uses throughout the Muslim world of the fez as a sort of dress garb in a sort of idiosyncratic manner by people trying to put together a good non-Western dress garb. They show an Indian politician wearing a fez here, of course, India, not a mostly Muslim country, but there's an enormous Muslim population of India.
Right. And here you see also it's involved in some marriage ceremonies, which would make sense as a more sort of traditional type of clothing.
Yes, yeah.
Because you'd still, the only place where you're really going to find a top hat here is at a marriage.
At a marriage, or someone doing a historical reenactment or looking deliberately eccentric.
Right.
Which is a good use for the fez. And in fact, if I needed a fez at short notice, I could order an expensive one online, like my friend who does Rocky Horror. Or I think the fastest and cheapest way would be to go to a costume store.
Right. They are very costume.
Yes.
They are very associated with the 1920s.
They are, yeah, because they were popular in Turkey then. And here's what it says on Wikipedia about fraternal organizations, which encompasses what I have in my greatest association with fezzes, which is going to harken back to the bowler.
Okay.
It says many fraternal organizations are known for wearing fezzes. Shriners are often depicted wearing a red fez. The headgear became official for Shriners in 1872. International Order of Alhambra wear a white fez. Mystic Order of Veiled Prophets of the Enchanted Realm members wear a black fez. That's a fantastic name.
Yes, let's go over that again. The Mystic Order
Order of the Veiled Prophets of the Enchanted Realm.
We're going to take a brief detour here and learn a little bit about the Mystic Order of the Veiled Prophets of the Enchanted Realm.
It's an appendant body in Freemasonry.
Oh, I see.
I'm not a Mason. I don't belong to any fraternal organizations.
Nor do I.
But I've heard you express a desire to.
I do. And any fraternal organizations out there that are looking for members, by all means, let me know.
Well, we could start an International Order of Hat Wearers or something.
It's pretty broad.
Yeah.
Well, do you have a hat? Can you put it on your head?
Knights of Peter Clover wear a blue fez. The Ancient Mystic Order of Sumerians wear various colors of fezzes based on rank. Knights of Khorasan wear a navy blue fez. The improved benevolent and protective order of Elks of the World wear various colors of fezzes based upon rank. The Loyal Order of Moose's second-degree body, the Moose Legion, wear a purple fez. And finally, in the Laurel and Hardy film Sons of the Desert, members of the fictional organization of the same name wear fezzes, and consequently so do those of the Laurel and Hardy International Appreciation Society, which is named after and modeled on the ones seen in the film.
Oh, wonderful. And
yes.
there's our connection to the bowler.
Yes, exactly, because I have
around.
long been a fan of Laurel and Hardy. And in Sons of the Desert, which is one of their best films, you can hear them going to the lodge meeting of the Sons of the Desert and singing, "We are the Sons of the Desert, having the time of our lives, marching along, 2,000 strong, far from our sweethearts and wives, God bless them. Tramp, 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 the boys are marching, attesting to this melody. Da 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 da. Sons of the desert are we."
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm reminded also of the last song in How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. Where they some may be a Shriner and some may be the Brotherhood of Man, right? They do list that, and I wonder if there's an appearance of a fez. I think that there is. I think they do, because there are some mock fraternal organizations in that group, and they're shown wearing fezzes.
Oh, I
as well.
think so.
The
Yes,
Chipmunks and the something or others.
Yeah,
but yeah.
I mean, that's a fun musical which I haven't seen in a long time, but it's very good.
And the movie version from the 60s is wonderful.
I haven't actually seen the 60s.
I haven't. I'll lend it to you.
I would like to see it. In high school, the class ahead of mine did it as the senior musical.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah. But the fez, I would say, in the U.S. is most associated with fraternal organizations, and which is why I think many more people have them than wear them walking down the street.
Right.
But the fraternal organization is less common, I think, as a trope in culture, and probably less common a thing to be a member of now than it was in the 30s and the 20s. For whatever reason.
Yeah, it just isn't.
But if you watch 20s and 30s comedies, Sons of the Desert isn't the only so-called lodge comedy. It's a common story that the men in the comedy are trying to find a way to sneak away from their wives to go to the lodge meeting and putting fezzes on their heads to do so.
Right.
And of the two people I know who wear fezzes, and they don't do it very often, but the fezzes they have are sort of parodically redesigned fezzes that look like they belong to an esoteric lodge order, and really they're just sort of silly designs on a fez, which is fine.
Right.
Here's I'm just looking at images of fezzes online, and here's one that seems to have a fish eating a pellet or something.
Right.
Which could be, Mystic Knights of the Sea or something.
Right.
But
it could just be a funny logo on a fez. And here we have. Oh, this is interesting. This is always one of my favorite parts of Hatcast, where we look at pictures of hats.
Yes, because
talk about them.
This shows us the permutations of any hat we're looking at. And I know that we're just Googling images of things and talking, but if you just wanted to Google the images, you can do that on your own without listening to a podcast.
Right. Or you can listen to us do it.
Yes.
I like this sort of baseball cap fez hybrid that we have here.
Which is a red baseball cap with a fez tassel on the top.
Yep.
And then we'll get to one here which is under it, which I think will parlay us into another element of what we're talking about. Apparently, the BBC marketing division sells official TV tie-in Doctor Who branded fezzes.
Of course.
Now, we should mention that in Doctor Who a few years ago, the 11th Doctor came in. He was played by Matt Smith. I'm a fan of Doctor Who, so I watched this. You're a fan of Doctor Who, or not as much as me?
I've seen some Doctor Who.
Yeah.
I've seen more of the 11th Doctor than any of the other ones, because I had a friend who enjoyed it and sort of had it on when I was around.
Yeah.
So
he's a divisive figure, but I like him. He came in, and he had a costume which involved wearing a bow tie.
Right.
And
a tweed jacket.
And the bow tie occasioned comment, and he would insist every time, bow ties are cool.
Because they are.
I agree. I wear bow ties myself.
I do too.
If you couldn't tell from my voice that I wear bow ties, I do. He vociferously demanded that bow ties were cool every time. He held it very strongly. And in one episode, he put on a fez.
And he
got
immediately announced, fezzes are cool.
Yes. This one met with more resistance than the bow ties, I think.
Right.
People had a tendency to knock the fezzes off of his head.
Right.
But the fez came back several times. He wore the fez and insisted that fezzes are cool.
It wasn't always part of his outfit, but
most of
it was
the time,
usually part of a joke, or
yeah. Most of the time, he would be wearing on a day-to-day basis the bow tie, and occasionally you would see a fez on his head. And so when people dress up as him, they often will include a fez. So I do think I know someone who has dressed up as Matt Smith, as the Doctor, and done so including a fez. So that is a third time I've seen a fez in the wild.
Someone dressing up as Matt Smith.
Playing the Doctor.
Okay.
Wearing a fez. So then we come to the question.
Oh, you know what? Before we get to it, I actually have seen a fez in the wild, though not on someone's head.
Oh.
It was in the trunk of someone's car. They opened it up, and there was a fez. I was getting something out of the trunk for them, and I meant to ask more about it. I assume it was probably a Shriner's fez, but I did see one in the trunk of a car.
It makes one want to ask, are fezzes in fact cool?
Yes.
I think so.
Absolutely.
And I think they're cool in the sense that Doctor Who posits. Because someone pressed him on the bow tie once, and he explained that there's nothing intrinsically cool about the bow tie. The cool thing is that you wear it and you don't care.
Right.
And a fez has a certain panache, while at the same time being completely odd and eccentric.
Right.
There is no way you go around wearing a fez thinking it's the typical normal thing to wear in the context of this society. So by wearing it that confidently, that's how you make it cool.
Well, wearing anything confidently makes it cool.
Yes.
Yeah. This goes for a lot of hats. But yeah, in particular, very noticeably out-of-place hats.
Yeah.
Which is probably why it became so popular with fraternal organizations. I know there's the sort of mysticism,
yes.
sort of this problematic view of the Middle East kind of thing. But then there's also just the factor that it is a cool hat that doesn't look like anybody else's.
Yeah, it's what Edward Said calls Orientalism.
Yes, I guess we do have to dive into this part, because it's kind of associated.
Well, there is a certain sense that if you're wearing a fez, are you doing so in an attempt to... Is a person wearing a fez making a mockery of an element of Turkish national dress?
Right.
And there are contexts in which doing so could be insulting to Turks.
Yes.
And I imagine Turks, and please write in Turks with your opinions on this, because I, not being a Turk, cannot speak for the Turks. But there are Turks, I imagine, who would see the usage of fezzes as a symbol of a fraternal organization as trivializing and misusing something that is a sign of Turkish national selfhood.
Right. I wonder, it does make me wonder, the sort of false origin story for the fez. Do you think that sort of came up as a way to trivialize the use of what is actually a sort of cultural symbol, saying like, oh, well, they made it up too?
Yeah, or to say they were actually trying to take something that was initially English,
right,
and make it Turkish by turning it red and removing the brim, which just is an accident of form.
Right.
That's interesting, and because I had heard that story and don't know where I heard it, and I've since been disabused of it, I don't know the nexus of that. I don't know the origin of it, or what that implies.
Any academics
for
out
imperialism
there looking to do some research, I think there's something for you.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So I think that there are contexts in which wearing a fez can be thoughtlessly imperialist.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are elements which it can be engaging in unhelpful mysticism and Orientalism and exoticizing Turkey and the East in a way that
is problematic.
Or that could be insulting.
Yeah.
So I think bear that in mind if you're thinking about wearing a fez.
Yeah.
I don't think the way the Doctor wears it in Doctor Who is mean-spirited or anything like that. And I haven't actually heard people complaining about it as Orientalism.
Well, and I think that especially in the context of Doctor Who, it's a space alien who finds various human things entertaining and puts them on his body.
Yes.
Which, it could be a spoon, for all that matters. It just happens to be the fez in this context.
Right, and as we've said about many hats before, well, this is only our 5th episode, but as we've said several times already, so I expect we'll say about many hats in the future. When you wear a hat, it has an element of self-creating or identity concept creating cultural association. It communicates something about you, what kind of hat you're wearing. Even if you're trying to wear the most neutral hat you can, people will derive something from that hat and create meaning from it and deduce something about how to interpret your appearance.
It's interesting. The fez is a very good example of that because it doesn't serve any particular practical element, right? It's not going to keep the sun out of your eyes.
It's not a practical hat.
It's a thing. It is a thing on your head that you put there to show people that you belong to a group, whether that group is a nationality or a fraternal organization or a group of television program fans.
Yes.
It is a signifier and really nothing else.
Yes, actually, yes, that's quite right. And I think that if you walk down the street wearing a fez and I see you, there might be other things that play into how I interpret it.
Right.
If I am walking past an Elks Lodge and you appear to be walking into it, I will deduce you are probably an elk.
I think that would be a fair...
Yes. But the fez is there to say things about you, and in most cases, it will say, I am Turkish, or it will say, I am a member of this lodge with this rank, or perhaps not even that. Or it will say, I am a Doctor Who fan.
Or I collect ephemera from old lodges. I'm a generally eccentric individual. That I think is probably the most likely way you're going to encounter it in the wild. That here's somebody who finds interesting things and puts them on their head.
Yes, or I was going to say, if you are wearing a fez in the manner of the Doctor himself, it's an odd thing that's cool that you're putting on your head.
Right.
But there are contexts where it could be exoticizing, where you might want to avoid the fez.
Right. So think about it, but I'm not going to say don't do it.
I wouldn't wear it outside of the contexts where its usage is appropriate, which is, I guess, true of most hats. But if I were a member of a lodge that wore fezzes, which I'm not, the only reason, though, that I'm not is that the Sons of the Desert Laurel and Hardy fan club doesn't have a chapter here in Binghamton where we're recording this podcast.
Oh, maybe you should start one.
I've thought about it. And if I did, the fez would be a part of the costume worn to the meetings.
You know what I was thinking? Something that would be a good substitution if you were a little bit afraid of the Orientalism in wearing a fez around, but still wanted to put something on your head that makes you seem cool, or is cool in the wearing, a smoking cap. Because even though it does originate from Turkey...
It does have an element of Orientalism to it.
It was so firmly adopted by Westerners to a larger scale than it was ever worn anywhere else, and became such an important part of sort of home wear.
Right.
I think that you could get away with wearing that.
There's a vast no man's land rather than a clearly defined border between cultural cross-pollination and exchange and...
cultural appropriation? Cultural... a more negative mocking aspect, right? Because...
and that the fez could approach that. The fez, which I don't think, and again, Turkish listeners write us, which I don't think is commonly worn in Turkey to this day.
Right.
And I think a lot of people mainly just associate it with lodge membership, which in itself is entirely dedicated to creating a group to be a member of.
Right. So yeah, in the end, it does remain a signifier of membership.
It's one of the purest hats out there in that sense.
Yeah. Well, I guess that brings us to rating.
Oh, yes.
How do we rate something that is... this is interesting. It's something so purely cultural.
Yeah, it's a pure cultural hat with many cultural associations, which, as I was saying, in terms of using the fez, if you're a Doctor Who fan, I don't think you should feel bad about wearing it to a Doctor Who convention.
Oh, no, not at all.
If you're a lodge member, I don't think you need to stop wearing it to your lodge.
Right.
If you're Turkish and very old-fashioned...
go for it.
That's your thing. If you're just looking for something to cover your head as you walk down the street, you've made a very eccentric choice.
You have other options. Continue listening. See if you find something that you like.
But if you're a fellow Laurel and Hardy fan who loved the Sons of the Desert film, hi. But our ratings. We rate on practicality, and we rate on style.
Wow, this one's going to be fun. Practicality, 0. Right?
I can't think of any practicality to the
purely
fez.
Impractical.
I mean, it's warmer than not wearing a hat.
Yes, that is true. Yeah, I'm going to give it a 0.
I don't... oh, gosh.
Well, you know what? No, I guess I can't give it a 0 because there's a... see, this is... I always do this. I always walk it back. There's a certain practicality in getting a message conveyed, right?
Yes.
But that's not typically how we mean practicality when we say it. But I guess we're going to have
There is a utility at any rate.
Yes. There are reasons to wear one. It's not like putting a paperclip on your head. It has a purpose.
Yes.
So I guess I have to give it a 1 for that.
Well, even paperclips worn on clothing now have a symbolic purpose.
Do they really?
Yes.
Am I out of touch?
A paperclip worn on the clothing is a sign of anti-Donald Trump.
Oh, see, I didn't even know that.
Yes.
Oh, look at that. How topical.
I wouldn't put it on your head because it would hurt.
Right. Okay. Well, in any case, I'm going to give the fez a 1 on practicality.
I have to not... I know it's more interesting when we disagree, but I have to agree with you there. Style value, I would have to give it very high.
10 because fezzes are cool.
All right. You know, I can't argue with you. I know I should argue with you.
I mean, how can you argue with such a strong case as they're cool?
I would feel like I was arguing with the doctor himself.
There we go.
Well, let's do the math here. 10 plus 10 plus 1 plus 1. I hope you don't mind that I do the math out loud every episode, but...
Well, we sort of have to since they can't see the calculator or piece of paper.
So the fez gets a 5.5.
Very solid.
It's a middle-of-the-road hat.
How respectable.
But far from typical. So the fez, ladies and gentlemen. If you have any interesting fezzes, feel free to send them our way. If you have any interesting comments, or indeed any boring comments, feel free to send those our way as well. It's Hatcast at yandex.com. HATCAST at YANDEX.com. And we'll be back next week with some more spirited discussion about a hat or hat-related topic.
Almost certainly.
Goodbye.
Bye.
We are the sons of the desert, having the time of